Welcome. You're listening to The Best of Investing. I'm your host, Edward Brown, and my two co-hosts, Nam Phan and Mark Hunt, are off today, but I do have a special guest who I will introduce in just a second here. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Use that number to answer the trivia questions for a 5-pack tanning certificate given away during the show. And that certificate is not sponsored by the radio station, but by Tan Bella Tanning Salon with 2 locations in San Francisco and 1 in Marin. Let's see, that certificate's worth over $100, so it's definitely worth winning these certificates. And today's trivia theme is kids movies. Today's guest is Kerry Ettinger. We've had him on before, of Primary Residential Mortgage. Kerry, welcome back to the Best of Investing.
Always happy to be here.
All right, so you're one of our go-to people when it comes to refinancing or just getting home mortgages. You guys are very competitive.
Yeah.
What's going on in the residential mortgage market?
Boy, well, that's a loaded question. What isn't going on in the residential mortgage market? It's a nutty time. You know, the last couple of years of historic, I mean, no hyperbole, the lowest rates in history, really had volume just completely spiked. You know, we're all running at maximum capacity, and now that rates have gone up a bit, and they feel like they're very high compared to a year or two ago, still historically extremely low. But just the comparison of feeling what they're doing now compared to the last couple of years makes it feel like the getting's not good. Yeah. But it still is historically very low. There's a lot of competition in the housing market these days for buyers, for sure. You know, we've got inflation that we're battling that's working against us. There's a lot of market drivers right now that
it seems like
working together in ways that they didn't normally work in the past. So it's a really interesting time in the mortgage world.
If I'm not mistaken, aren't the millennials kind of coming into the market now? And some of those people, maybe a few years ago, they were younger when the Great Recession happened, and they realized how much their parents were suffering.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them say, "Oh no, I'm just going to rent." But I guess they start seeing the house prices go up, and they go, "I got to catch this gravy train."
Yeah, I think the messaging is finally sinking in. In general, that look, the best way to create intergenerational wealth is not the best way, but one of the most useful ways to create intergenerational wealth is through real estate, right? And I think that messaging is finally coming across even to groups such as the millennials, who tend to lead a very they try to lead a much smaller footprint life, right? Amassing less things and being more nimble and having being more online and just not being weighed down so much with things. But I think that reality starts to age, wisdom sinks in, and you realize the value, even though it's not always an easy thing to own real estate, that the benefits definitely outweigh the efforts and some of the financial.
Well, my son's a good example. He is tired of renting, tired of moving around, so he's finally gonna settle down and buy a house. And the other thing to think about, besides getting some tax advantages, is the fact that the mortgage that you pay is set from the standpoint of, real estate prices go up, but the loan doesn't go up. In fact, it goes down every time you make a mortgage payment. So definitely there's that accumulation of wealth.
It's true. So that is one of the most important. I mean, there's lots of features when that kind of, not kind of, significantly tip the scale for buying versus renting in general. Now, not always. Sure. There's a caveat, of course, to every generalization we make. By and large, renting versus owning, it tips in favor of owning heavily.
Yeah.
It's one of the main factors, and there's many factors that kind of tip the scale that way, is the fact that you have a consistent payment. Yes, your taxes are going to be reassessed each year. In California, it only goes up 2%, which is great. Of course, your homeowner's insurance will increase a little bit every year. So your net housing costs will increase incrementally, but that principal and interest payment stays level.
But also, if you're renting, potentially your landlord could be increasing the rent too, and you're not.
That's the thing. I mean, rents are always going to move with market rate. I mean, even if you have, there's rent control, of course, in certain areas, but in general, where landlords have the ability to do so, they're going to keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
You know, and your mortgage is inflation proof. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, because most people are going to opt for a fixed rate.
Yeah, most people do. I think right now, boy, unless you can convince me of a very specific situation where an adjustable would be right for you,
yeah,
I would be hard pressed to feel good about recommending a adjustable to anybody, because trying to count on the market cooperating in the next few years after your fixed period is over, it's not a safe bet these days. So you're really gonna have to convince me. The borrower would really have to convince me pretty strongly for me to recommend anything other than a fixed.
Gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what, before we, or when we come back from break, I do want to talk to you about, all these various interest rate hikes that are anticipated, and how people are looking at this, from the standpoint of, gosh, maybe I should refinance now, and then buying a house, et cetera. So it's kind of interesting how your place in the marketplace is like, when interest rates drop heavily, you're busy because of refinances. But then also, if people can see the handwriting on the wall, sometimes they want to go ahead and get things done now too. So we'll talk about that in the next segment. I want to make a quick mention here for the Mount View Hotel and Spa in Calistoga. They have one of the nicest pools, and it's nice and warm.
Oh, yeah?
They're right there on Lincoln Avenue. You got to check them out. They're one of the nicest hotels in Calistoga, the mountviewhotel.com. All right, here's our first trivia theme. First trivia question. I know you'll know the answers because you have little kids, so don't answer until we come back.
Okay.
First trivia question is, in which animated movie would you find the characters Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona? Oh, and a very talkative donkey makes his first big screen appearance in this film. All right, call 888-912-1190. You knew from the first two ones, I'm sure.
I wasn't sure until the third one.
All right, 888-912-1190. First caller with the correct answer is going to win that tanning certificate from Tan Bella, which is worth over $100. Again, 888-912-1190 to answer this question. In which animated movie would you find the characters Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona, and a very talkative donkey makes his first big screen appearance in this film? Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Edward Brown here, along with my special guest, Kerry Ettinger of Primary Residential Mortgage. All right, first trivia question. In which animated movie would you find the characters Lord Farquaad and Princess Fiona, and a very talkative donkey?
I'm going to say the Shrek series.
Shrek, yeah, Shrek, the first one, yeah, Shrek.
All right.
Okay, 1 for 1. All right, so the Fed has been, first of all, they raised interest rates, I think just a quarter point, but there's talk that they're going to be raising them in increments of a half a point. And I've heard as many as 11 different, now I don't know if they're going to do it each time, 11 of them, because that'd be 5.5% higher, to try to knock down inflation.
There's two guaranteed, my understanding is there's two guaranteed hikes remaining for the year. There could be more, but there's at least two more that are for sure. And
then they'll each probably be for 0.5%.
Yeah, the first one was a quarter. So now the prime interest rate is at 3.5. It was at 3.25, which was, and that's slightly different than the Fed, but kind of it tracks the same. So the prime was 3.25 and was locked at that for about 2-3 years during the pandemic. So they didn't change, they didn't touch it at all. But now they're playing catch up, and rising Fed interest rates. Now here's the interesting thing about that. Usually you would say, okay, well the Fed's raising interest rates, that's going to have an impact on mortgage interest rates, and usually that's true. There's an indirect relationship there. However, the Fed is raising interest rates to fight inflation, right? So inflation is the enemy of interest rates, at least for mortgage interest rates, right? So that's the fact that we have record inflation is one of the factors that's really probably the main factor that's driving interest rates higher right now as far as borrowing money is concerned. So what the Fed is doing by raising interest rates is actually a good thing for mortgage interest rates, because the reason why they're doing that is to combat inflation, keep inflation under control. So even though you would think that raising the Fed interest rate is indicative of increasing mortgage interest rates, what's pushing the mortgage interest rates up is the inflation, which the Fed raising their interest rates was a response to that. So the good news is the Fed raising their interest rates will hopefully be able to sort of curb the inflation a bit and will bode well for mortgage interest rates in the long run. So hopefully it will
I see what you're saying.
slow down this rapid increase that we're seeing. I mean,
how about they just open up the pipelines of oil and keep the prices down that way?
Just do something. Just do something.
I gotta say, I gotta get on my little tirade. I think I did this once before. It's like, okay, if we're trying to, for some reason, I look at this and I say, okay, the environmentalists are trying to, save the planet, but apparently all they care about is saving the United States. They don't care about Europe and Iran and all those other places that have oil, because it's like, sure, go ahead, we won't pump oil, but we're going to get all this oil from all these other places, which means we don't really care about your side of the planet. And oh, by the way, your oil is dirtier than ours, so we're going to make the planet worse for it.
Right.
So it's just a game, and
it is, and it's I don't know. Well, we can go on and on about my faith in society and humanity, but it's on the surface, and probably the more you dig, it's probably even worse. A lot of these things just don't make sense.
Well, and I was listening to a news program last night, and what was mentioned is behind the scenes, the liberal people who are in that camp love the fact that oil prices are going so high, because then they can push the new Green Deal and that sort of. They go, look, see what happens? You got to go to this. But I think what people forget is if you have an electric car, where does the electricity come from?
Well, hopefully your house is powered by solar as well. I have a buddy who actually I was just talking to recently. He was interested in doing a cash out refi because they're doing solar on their home. Okay. And I talked him out of doing a refi because I refied him last year, and he's in the high twos. So for him to refi a few $100,000 just to gain $50,000, and for him to bump his interest rate that high was not a good way for him to access that $50,000.
Gotcha.
Like, a small number compared to the size of his existing balance. So that would have taken the bulk of his balance, the bulk of that money, from high twos to the low fours.
And are you getting? Are you really busy right now? Because people are saying, "Gosh, if I don't catch it now, the gravy train of interest rates, that they're going to go up even more."
No.
Okay.
But I'll get back to that in a second. I do want to address that. But just to kind of finish with that, so what my friend is doing is they're going all in on solar. I mean, he happens to be in the solar industry, but they're going all in on solar and electric. So they're powering their house with solar. Okay. They are buying a second electric vehicle. So to answer your question, that's what they're doing. And especially now that PG&E's rates are so high, it even got me thinking, geez, our home apparently doesn't have the right orientation for solar, but if there's something we can do to knock our costs down a little bit.
But you know what though? I have a couple of different solar systems on my house, and my bill was still outrageous because of the gas price.
Because of the gas, I know I know exactly.
Okay. That's a whole different animal.
I know. So we're planning a remodel right now, and we're considering, should we just bite the bullet and go with an electric stove this time around, an electric range, and then try to get away from, and we're maybe doing some work on our HVAC system. So I know we're thinking about all these things. Gas is, every time I hear the heater on at night when I'm sleeping, I'm like, I gotta get out of bed.
I know, that's what we make sure that we turn off the heaters at night.
I know. I thought I said it right, but I guess not. Anyway, to answer your question, it is definitely time to keep your foot on the gas in terms of financing. If you think that you have some adjustments to make in your finance and your debt load, now is the time to explore it. If you're thinking about purchasing a home, now is the time to continue to push forward. It is not the time to just sit and wait, because the medium term projections in the next at least 6 months to 2-3 years are continued increase in home values, and no real signs of lowering interest rates. I mean, hopefully we'll get inflation under control, and that will stop the rapid increase. And of course, things happen that we can't predict, which will have effects on the market. But
Well, and I know some people sit on the sidelines when interest rates are starting to drop because they think, gosh, maybe if I wait, they'll drop even further. But now, I mean, it's like, I don't know anybody who's thinking that interest rates are going to drop.
now,
Specifically,
there are situations definitely where it's like, okay, what you have right now is better, or the benefit of what we can do for you is not enough compared to your current situation.
Okay.
That happens.
Tell you what, when we come back, we have an email question that we got that we want to ask you. Second trivia question. I am a little robot. I don't really say much other than my name, and I really enjoy collecting other people's rubbish. Who am I? All right.
Yeah.
Email Edward I'm sorry. Call 888-912-1190. First caller with correct answers and win that tanning certificate. Stay with us. Best of Investing. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown along with Kerry Ettinger. Second trivia question. I am a little robot. I don't really say much other than my name, and I really enjoy collecting other people's rubbish. Who am I?
Wall-E.
Wall-E. That's right. Very good. Okay, so Kerry, an email comes in from a listener who says, I am house rich and cash poor. Should I refinance my house to set up a savings account? Good question.
That is a great question. The answer is it depends, leaning a little bit more towards yes, but it definitely depends. So 2 years ago, 1 year ago, if you asked me that question, I would have said absolutely. In fact, we did the same thing. You know, our equity was up, the values were at all-time highs. We could borrow money at all-time lows. We knew we had this remodel plan. We weren't quite sure of everything and how, like, if it was going to come together, but I knew that if I pulled the money out at I got 2.875% on 30 years. Well, if I pulled it out at that rate, if we don't do the remodel, I can invest that at a higher rate, right? Okay. So I can still do okay. So I didn't, I was scared that I'd pull all this money out and paying interest on it. And if we don't do the remodel, then what? I've got this wad of cash that I'm paying monthly to borrow. Yeah. But if you can invest it at a higher interest rate than you borrowed it, then you're going to be net positive. So to your listeners' question, if you can invest that money into some kind of investment that has a higher interest rate than you're borrowing, then absolutely yes. There are also times where you might not be net positive, but having access to liquid cash is important for whatever life reason that you might have. Even if it means paying a cost for that because you are losing a little bit of interest, when we talk about the investment versus the borrowing. So really the answer is it depends.
Yeah, I can see. Let me chime in here too, because ordinarily you don't just borrow money just to borrow money, but if there's a situation like you said where, well, here, how about this scenario where if interest rates start going up even further, it may be more difficult for this listener to qualify, and then that person's just going to be shut out and will never have access to the money until rates come way down. So at least this way, this listener can access money now, and even if they don't invest it, way over what they can borrow at, it's kind of negative arbitrage is a lot smaller.
Well, exactly. So it does depend on what the purpose for needing that cash is. Yeah. But leveraging your equity is an excellent way to provide yourself with either cash on hand for rainy days, because if you have a rainy day, you can't necessarily try to refinance your home at that point to raise cash, right? Because the rainy day might be losing your job, in which case you're not going to qualify for a mortgage. So utilizing your equity, and that's a big thing that I try to educate my clients on, is that your equity is a resource. It's a tool for you. It's not just, oh, that's great, look how much my house is raised in value. Yeah. You can leverage that equity during your life or prior to even selling the house in lots of ways that really benefits you. Borrowing money against your house so that you can have savings or have some access to liquid cash is a great way if the situation is right. I wouldn't say yes for every situation, of course, but
yeah, because you don't want to use it like an ATM or hey, let's go buy a boat just to buy a boat.
No. Of course, we want these to be financially sound and smart uses of this money. It's not okay, I'm going to borrow a bunch of money, so I have 200 grand now, and all of a sudden let's go. Let's go to Vegas for the weekend. It's not one of the, I would never advise somebody to do that. I'd also have a hard time providing a loan for somebody if that was their intention.
Yeah.
I can't say no, but I mean, it's like, I'd have a long talking to with my client about the use of their money.
Yeah.
But, there's other ways to leverage your equity other than a refinance. There's home equity lines of credit and home equity loans. So, but yes, and I know we don't have time to get into this now, but understanding the power of home equity, especially in these this time of rising home values,
Yeah.
is an extremely powerful tool that investors need to understand. And I speak to everybody that's investors. Managing debt is just one way to increase your investments. So,
well, especially if you have other debt that's at a higher rate, credit cards, et cetera, car loans, maybe
exactly.
Car loans are usually pretty good nowadays, but
100%. And people sometimes will be adverse to saying, well, yeah, okay, the credit, I'm paying more each month because the interest rate on my credit card is so much higher, but I don't want to roll that out for 30 years. I don't want to take this nut of money that I owe, and I could pay it off by refinancing my house, but then all of a sudden I'm paying it for 30 years, I'm going to pay more interest in the long run. Well, that's true, or it might be true. However, the fact that you freed up that cash flow, you've reduced your monthly expenses, puts cash in your hand to be able to do things and make up for the fact that you might be paying more interest in the long run. You might be able to completely beat that interest because you've invested that cash flow properly.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a question. See if you know. I mean, not that you would know this, but I want you to guess. My first car loan that I ever got. Guess what interest rate I was paying?
Oh my gosh! All right. Well, we all talk about the interest rates for home loans back in the 80s and 70s and stuff, right? So considering car loans right now, or I don't know, what are they? I should know. I bought my truck a couple of years ago. I'm gonna guess 30%.
Well, no, that wasn't that crazy. No, I mean, because that would be like a payday type one.
I know.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that high. Take another guess.
All right, how about well, it's got to be higher than what we talked about mortgage interest rates being back then. So I'm gonna guess 18%.
Okay, not bad. 20.75%.
20.75. Okay.
20
that makes sense. Yeah.
And it's funny because I could have paid cash.
Yeah.
But I thought I was so smart. I could make more than 20.75% in the stock market.
That was very optimistic.
Of course, I was 19 years old, so I think I learned a little bit.
Hey, you know what? That is exactly what you should be thinking at that age for a low stake kind of debt / investment like that.
Yeah.
You for a pretty low cost, you learn a valuable lesson about leveraging debt, right?
Yeah.
And when you can leverage debt and actually make it work out for you. Leveraging a 20% interest rate debt that's a little tough to do.
Well, and it's funny because money market rates at the bank were 16%.
At the time.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. So it was like, well, okay, worst comes to worst, I'd have -4%. Not
exactly.
Of course, I didn't do as well in the stock market as I thought I could. Okay, hey, tell you what, we're gonna get to our next trivia question here. Okay. This uplifting 2009 animated movie featured an elderly man who befriends a hyperactive little kid. Name the movie where balloons are featured heavily. All right, that's our trivia question.
I'm going 3 for 3.
912-1190. First caller with correct answer wins that tanning certificate. Stay with us. The Best of Investing will be right back. Do not touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown along with Kerry Ettinger. Third trivia question. This very uplifting 2009 animated movie featured an elderly man who befriends a hyperactive little kid. Name the movie where balloons are featured heavily. Up. It's about the shortest name for a movie I think there is out there.
I think it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of like what else is there. Okay. It's so funny. I remember some trivia thing one time where it was like, okay, what was the shortest letter sent to anybody and the shortest response? And it was an author writing to his publisher, and all he did was send. This is way before email. So he sent a letter with just a question mark, and the answer came back with an exclamation point. I thought that was pretty good.
That's like a text message, kind of,
Yeah, very, very similar. Okay, so now, Kerry, what kind of interest rates are people looking at right now for various? There's conforming, non-conforming, et cetera.
Yeah,
30 years.
when I say it, I'm looking at the rates right now, the average rates, and it's like, our memories are always so short. So I look at,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's so high, but it's not. I mean, it's high compared to last year. So right now, 30-year fixed is averaging 4.78% across the country.
Okay.
15, there's some advantage there for shorter terms, so that's averaging 4.13%.
Are these conforming?
Those are conforming. Yep. FHA 30 years are coming in around 4.37% on average. Jumbos are actually performing well compared to 30-year fixed. So a 30-year jumbo is compared to a 30-year fixed conforming.
Yeah.
So the difference between jumbo and a fixed are higher loan values, higher loan amounts. So a 30-year jumbo is averaging about 4.15% across the country right now.
And then why is it, it's so funny, it used to be in the old days that the more you borrow, the higher the interest rate.
I know. Yep. So and back in the day, yes, so the jumbos were more costly loan, right? Because you're borrowing more money. Theoretically, they're more risky. Mortgage rates always are in response to the level of risk of the loan itself, right? So one of the risk factors is a high loan amount. Well, I think over the years, what's happened is the guidelines to be able to qualify for a jumbo loan are much more strict. So I think over the years they've found that those borrowers, it's just a lower default rate pool of borrowers, right? Because they're more heavily vetted. So the loans, just in how hard they are to qualify for, provides some of that risk relief, right? So that's reflected in the interest rates. And of course, investors are always wanting to make their product as appealing as possible. Yes, they could ride the wave of, people are used to paying a higher rate for larger loan amounts, but just like anything, supply and demand, if they lower the rate, that attracts more people to those jumbos.
It reminds me of when people are applying for life insurance, how you see these commercials where they say, hey, you don't have to qualify, you just fill out 4 questions, they'll give you insurance. And sure, you might get insurance from them, but it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you were to say, you know what, I'm going to bite the bullet and fill out a real application and let them take blood and blood pressure and look at all my records. It's just a risk reward from the insurance company.
It's like everything, and especially in our industry. And I say this sheepishly because I'm a mortgage lender. But I'm gonna put all of us into this category. We're still not a trusted category of as a profession. Of course I'm trustworthy. My most important thing is helping people. Even if that means talking them out of doing a loan, right? Yeah. So I can say that about myself. Of course, the rubber hits the road when you actually work with me, but there are still a lot of smarmy people in this industry, and you just have to work with somebody that you have a referral to.
Well, you guys are a wealth of resource. In fact, we haven't told anybody yet, your information, your contact information. Why don't you go ahead and give that out?
Yeah, Kerry Ettinger, so it's Primary Residential Mortgage. We are the San Francisco division of Primary Residential Mortgage. So we're a nationwide company. We're the San Francisco division. We have 2 branches, the San Francisco branch, and we're here in the San Rafael branch. We're located at 1101 Fifth Avenue, so we're right in the heart of downtown, right behind Aroma Cafe. You can't see it because there's too much light coming in the windows, but right back there, right over there is Mount Tam. So right here in the heart of San Rafael. My phone number, if you ever like to give me a call and just want to ask questions or need to be pointed in the right direction, I also have a wealth of other trusted partners in other fields I can make referrals to. My phone number, our office number is 415-870-2752. My cell phone is 415-827-5960. And my email address is kettinger, so it's KETTINGER @PrimeRes, so it's PRIMERES.com.
Yeah, in fact, I remember referring someone to you, and I saw him at a restaurant not long ago, and he said, Edward, thank you so much for referring Kerry. He did a great job for me. And
thank you for that. And you know what? I have one to return. So we have a mutual client that I worked with originally on his refi. You helped him out with his the remainder of his construction loan to get through his remodel. Oh, yeah. And he said, "Man, Edward is the man." He's like, I don't know how I would have been able to complete this project without Edward. So he was really happy with me that I referred you to him. So you have to have those trusted referral partners. Like you just have to have people you trust. Otherwise, man, when you're talking about this much money, it's just to go online and work with the Quickens and not to throw anybody under the bus. Work with the online lenders, then you don't know who you're working with. It's a scary thing. I wouldn't want to go to just some doctor and say, yeah, cut out my spleen.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope you're okay. I hope you're good.
It's like, I was looking for an operation, so I looked in the want ads to see, I
Googled spleen removal operation.
Yeah, exactly.
Your name came up first.
And when you look on their website, it says, job opportunities. No,
exactly.
No experience necessary. Will train.
Yes.
That's the place I want to go.
Look, my advice is to look elsewhere.
Yeah, no, referrals is really the best way. Especially, it's funny. A lot of people don't. They almost look at mortgages like a commodity, like going down to Safeway and buying apples. But it's really amazing when you're dealing with somebody who you can trust and who can maneuver your way through the system. It's really amazing how important it is. You're talking about a lot of money. So you don't want to mess around.
100%, and that's a good word that you use, commodity. I mean, we're not. Look, if you can look at a mortgage product as a commodity, sure, but you're doing yourself a disservice, right? We always say the best strategy is always going to beat the best rate, right? If you're only looking for rate, and a lot of people even ignore closing costs. If you're just shopping for rate, you've completely lost the forest for the trees.
Yeah.
You might not even get the house that you're trying to.
Well, also timing. That's the other thing is that if you've got like all the time in the world, then maybe it makes sense.
And if you're extremely savvy and you don't need that consultant, you don't need the sort of the advisory services that we provide. Yes, our product is the loan, but I mean, there's so much more that we're offering our clients. And to not get that, especially first-time home buyers, it's.
Oh yeah, especially for first time. And then especially there's times when you have to kind of really hold their hand through the process, and there's certain things to and not that you're going to hide anything, but you disclose things in a certain way where you can talk to the underwriter and explain a certain situation that X's and O's with someone on the internet can't do. All right, stay with us. The Best of Investing will be back with some closing comments. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my special guest, Kerry Ettinger, of Primary Residential Mortgage. No trivia question, but one thing we forgot to mention also is how fast you guys can work.
Yeah, we're direct lenders, and we have our own in-house staff. We have the entire staff is in-house. We have 2 underwriters, so we have a tight relationship with them. We can work sort of in a collaborative, problem-solving way rather than a typical structure such as a brokerage. The underwriter's not part of your staff, not part of your team. So there's really not a lot of interaction there. So we're able to really move swiftly and problem solve and strategize about the quickest and best way to complete a loan. And we have our own in-house processors. So because everything's in-house, not only do we have sort of that team collaboration that really allows us to move fast, but we can control the pipeline, right? So when something's high priority and has to get done, we can move things around, right? So brokerages and other types of structures are not quite able to do that because they can't control the pipeline the way we can. In general, what has been holding up has been appraisals, but those have gotten a lot faster. They took a long time during 20 and 21, but now the volume's down, appraisals are happening a lot faster. So we have no problem going in 21 days on a purchase.
That's pretty good.
Not even quicker than that, but it also kind of depends on the appraisal. And of course, the client being on board. And I always say, like, look, I know you have a job, I know you have a family, I know you have all this, but you're in a purchase situation right now. This is your number one job right now.
Yeah.
You have to make this loan, this transaction, this has to be your main priority outside of family and health stuff, all that stuff. But like, as far as prioritizing, your daily tasks, when something pops up with your loan, that's what you got to do first.
No, it's a very good point. Sometimes you really have to hold the hand of them and say, listen, we need a copy of your tax return.
Yeah.
We need this bank statement, or we need the application to begin with, for goodness sake.
I mean, look, we can promise fast turnaround times, but that's only based on, us getting the information we need in a timely manner. Everyone on the origination side of things is highly motivated to get done, which is refreshing. When I was an engineer, it was like people will get to it eventually. In this industry, everyone's like, what do you need? Here you go.
Yeah.
But you keep moving. So it's nice. I like that.
That's smart. And that's the other thing. It's not, you know, it's not so much the appraisers, as you said, but a lot of times just title and escrow. They're busy.
Escrow,
They're working from home.
We have a great, for our refis, we have a great relationship with a title and escrow company that we use for all of our refis. On purchases, the seller usually chooses a title and escrow company, so we don't have a lot of control there. But yeah, it definitely benefits to have a good relationship with the title and escrow company, because again, we do so much work with them, we refer so much work to them, that we can call them up, they answer the phone, give us responses on, you know, academic questions or questions for clients. And
did you say that the seller is the one who's been choosing?
yeah, typically the seller chooses the title and escrow company. Sometimes they'll allow the buyer to do so if they haven't chosen one or don't have a preference, but usually either the seller has one in mind, or the listing agent will have a title, because they, you know, they have relationships and they want to refer people to their people, and you know, keep the referrals going that way.
Well, and as long as it's a normal title company, the buyer shouldn't really care.
Oh no, the
seller wants to make sure, I want to get my money. You know?
Yeah, no. There's never like, I don't know. If I'm a buyer, I'm not going to really say no. I don't want to look at that title company. You know, you have title insurance. There's only so much they can really mess up. So it's kind of yes, you can shop if you're really trying to pinch pennies. You can shop. There are certain services you can shop for, but I've never really seen somebody do that successfully without spending way more effort than it was worth. Yeah. So usually you just get the title company who the seller is selected, and you just go.
Well, especially if the seller has done let's say a refi in the last 6 months, then you know a lot of stuff's been already pulled. All right, thank Kerry Ettinger from Primary Residential Mortgage. Thank you again for being our guest. And Absolutely. Here's our thoughts today. So I got thrown out of my local park after arranging the squirrels by height. They didn't like me critter-sizing. I like that. And I hate it when I think I'm buying organic vegetables, and when I get home, I discover they're just regular donuts. All right, tune in next week to the best. I
have that problem as well.
You like that one too? Okay, we'll be giving away more free prizes for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.